Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Local Pundit. I'm Josh Anthony. This is a very, very special day. I'm very excited to have this guest on our show. It's kind of one of the pinch me moments. I absolutely can tell you that. Very honored. Our guest today was born in Hightown in Wrexham. He's a long time Wrexham supporter. He attended the University of Liverpool, where he studied modern history. Graduated with honors. I'm correct right there. He's also a school teacher, from what I hear as well. But most importantly, I'll say he is the velvet hammer of commentary for the past 32 years for Wrexham. He started out as hospital radio, which was awesome at 21 years old, doing that for Wrexham. Direct line, he said. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And he's in my ear and your ear for every match day around the world. The Local Pundit welcomes the voice of Wrexham, Mr. Mark Griffiths. Thank you very much for coming in.
Oh, Josh, it was worth it just for that intro. Thank you very much. It made me feel terribly important. I love the idea that I'm the velvet hammer. I've always seen myself more as a sandpaper fish fork. So I'm delighted with that. It's a joy to be on, mate. Absolute pleasure to be on.
Thank you. We're so glad that we were exchanging. Actually, you wrote me an email 3:21 in the morning, and I woke up and I was like, "Oh, he's on!" So I was really excited. Yeah. I was really excited.
People wake up for my emails.
They do it, and it's great. I'm so blessed, and I know the community is really excited on you. Thank you for coming in. We'll kick it off. Listen, we always start with an origin story on the Local Pundit, so put a little pressure on you. I want to hear the origin story of Mark Griffiths.
No problem. Although you seem to know pretty much my entire life history. To be fair, that was detailed. As my dad would say, I was born at an early age, and indeed brought up in Hightown. I'm delighted to hear Hightown getting a mention. I went to school. There's a shock. I suppose. A lot of people would question that, but I got the paperwork to prove it. I loved football from my next door neighbour. I remember I'd be a little kid playing in the front garden, and my next door neighbour would come in, having watched Wrexham play, and our great season, 1977-78. I remember him coming back after we clinched promotion by winning 7-1. And he was excited, telling me all about it. And I'm this little kid sitting in the front garden thinking, ooh, football sounds good. Now, my dad had been a Wrexham fan for a long time. It's, sorry, Dad, but it seems it was the neighbour that really made the thought stick into my head. And so I started going then. I started getting the idea, it'd be great to be a commentator. It shows you the way things change now. Where I used to sit was directly, it was in the what's now called the Macron stand, but it wasn't there then. It was the previous stand, which was a very rickety wooden structure, and the entrance to the commentary area, which was directly above me, was via literally somebody bringing a ladder. So somebody would plonk a wooden ladder there. 99% of the time, there would be nobody up there in terms of TV commentary, but then occasionally Wales would play there, and you'd get this famous person from Match of the Day clambering up this wobbly ladder to get in. And I looked at it and I thought, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I want a piece of this. I'd sit in my front room silently commentating along like the loser I am. And then I saw an advert in the back page of the local paper saying the hospital radio wanted volunteers to commentate. And I replied. They said, well, come and watch us do it for a game. And I apologize. You may need to get your editing scissors out here because I've told this story a few times, I think that. Yeah. I went in and I was at the back. It was a proper old-fashioned box on top of the stand. And I was at the back of it. And there was this guy who was well known as the sort of the local Wrexham commentator. And I watched him and I thought, he inspired me because he was quite old. He had a very thick West Walian accent, and he couldn't be bothered to learn the names of any of the other side. And he would always preface, he'd identify them by number, which of course is really useful when you're in hospital and you can't see the numbers. Yeah. And he'd always preface it with a bit of mild swearing. It's mild. Can I use mild swearing?
You can use whatever you want. The velvet hammer. Go ahead. Let it rip. There you go.
He would be commentating like this. That bloody number 9's got the ball. He's giving it to the bloody number 10. And I was sitting there and he inspired me. I thought, I can do that. You know what I mean? Come on. So that genuinely said me like, yeah, I can do better. I can do this. And so I started doing it like that. It was an odd experience because the stand was condemned, but we were still on the top of it. That would never happen now. It was astounding. And genuinely, the floor had rotted away, but you couldn't see where because there was a carpet over it. So you had to really tiptoe. You had to feel your way across the commentary box because the beams were in place, but there wasn't much in between the beams. And you would be like, okay, feel the floor. Right, there's nothing under there. I'd be falling straight down into the stand. Okay, that's a beam. Oh, seriously, we had to creep our way across. And we had one bloke who did it with us who was a bit, well, should we say, maybe not the most mature person in the world, who we were told the stand was going to be bulldozed in the summer. So he thought that meant, obviously, we were told that the last game of the season at Wrexham was the last time we'd be in that commentary box. So he decided to celebrate by smashing it up.
Oh,
I mean, what? And I remember just sitting there and suddenly he starts genuinely smashing into the wall because it was crumbly, pulling wires out. And you sort of, what pleasure you get? He was older than me. I should have said something, you know. Yeah, maybe it was an expressive art sort of performance. But of course it wasn't shut down and we were in it for another 2 years. It's a condemned building with liquids, with water, rain going down the insides of the walls. The floor rotted away and wires sticking out of the walls. Oh, it was an experience.
It's interesting because you bring that up because we have a question from one of our community members, Welsh Techie from the Eat More Chips podcast. He's like, "What was it like commenting in the old mold stand?" So you know, and obviously, barring getting electrocuted, it sounded like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. It was odd as well because it had glass paneled windows at the front, which opened at hinges at the top, so you're supposed to be able to open it out. Trouble was that they didn't open. Which most of the time is okay, but if it was really cold, because obviously it'd be fairly warm in there because there's people in there, it would mist up really badly and you couldn't open it. And it didn't happen all that often, but when it did, it was a challenge. There's nothing you could do. I remember we got promoted in the early 90s and there was this game which we were excellent at. We were playing York City, who were one of the other teams going for promotion, and we scored straight away and we beat them 3-0. And we were so, that was one of those games where you think, yeah, we're going up this year. We're so authoritative, but you could barely see the game. There were like little patches that you could sort of peer through and you're sticking your face up against the glass. It was weird. There's also, and this is another one to edit out possibly because I know I've said it before, we thought we were going to get killed one game because Wales were playing a friendly game against Sweden. And because it was European Championship qualifying game, the flagpoles were on top of this rickety stand on top of our commentary area. And so the UEFA, Wales had brought their flag and it was the correct size for the flagpole. Sweden had brought their correct size. UEFA had brought the sort of enormous thing that would cover a house, you know, if they were fumigating it.
The target. Yeah,
it was crazy. Where they thought they were going. They obviously thought they were going to play it in some massive communist era Bulgarian concrete arena, you know. So it was enormous, and I was hugely amused before the game because it went all the way down the back of the stand and halfway across the Mold Road, which is one of the main roads into Wrexham. This big UEFA flag getting run over constantly. So I thought this was hilarious. I thought it was less hilarious during the game when the wind got up, caught the flag, and obviously the flag must have gone whoop and actually extended, and we could feel ourselves being pulled backwards by it. It was trying to rip the stand's roof off. And let's be honest, like I said, this was a condemned building.
Yeah.
There was all sorts of rain damage in it by then. It's genuinely not inconceivable that could have come off. And just for a moment, you know, you feel like you're in a plane taking off. But then the headline flashes. It was literally like that. And then the headline like flashes across your face. Local teacher killed as building flies into housing estate. I'm thinking, but luckily it settled down. And then, well, typically as we are British, we just said nothing and carried on and kept going in there until it actually was shut down. So like, oh, we'll just go there. Might happen again. Oh, well, it'd be rude to say something, though, wouldn't it?
We
we're very
that one.
Yeah,
we that one will be another one there too. Which I'm glad. Well, we're glad you're here. I think it's fantastic. And you talked about the hospital radio. You're 21 years old. In the late 80s, learning your craft and what you do. Listen, what you do and is amazing. But learning your craft and evolving it in your style is just very calming in an environment where it's like it's all action and you keep people engaged. And I have you in my ear all the time. So what was your inspiration for what you do and evolving over the years of your style? Do you have a pinpoint on that?
I do, but it won't be what you expect, I don't think, because people often say, who are my favorite commentators? And I've got to be honest. And by the way, I do totally accept if people find me irritating, we are going to have a concept of what we want in a commentator. And I feel I don't really like other commentators. I don't mean other. I don't see them as a competition. I'm just a guy having fun. But I don't like the way commentary is done. So there are very few commentators that actually don't almost detract something away from the game. I think if I could have the option of the crowd noise without the commentator, I might take it. So I'm sympathetic if I rub people up the wrong way, because I think I'm a bit on the extreme end. Well, I'm definitely and deliberately on the extreme end of the spectrum because I don't really like the normal way of doing it, if you will. So it's more based, it's partly a reaction against things I hear, and I think that shouldn't be done that way. For example, in Britain, the radio commentary, and I'd say I'm a radio commentator, really. I'm much better at that than doing live streams.
Can I say that, not to cut you off, but I enjoy radio commentary better than visual commentary, because you do put a picture together, and it doesn't necessarily need to be 20 words. It could be 5 words or 6, you know what I mean, or 10 words, and less is more. But it allows you to use your mind's eye, and I think you do that beautifully.
Well, that's very kind of you. I am, as an English teacher or ex-English teacher, I am massively aware of language. I like there's a George Orwell's 7 Rules of Language, and I really quite like it's talking about trying to pare things down and describe them accurately. And avoiding cliches. And I know I will fall foul of all the traps and do those things sometimes, but trying to bear it in mind, I think, is a healthy way to go about it. It must be said, the 7th rule is if any of those things mean you don't tell the truth, just break all the rules. So, okay. That's my excuse. Things I would see and hear that I didn't enjoy much, like the British sort of way of doing radio commentary has evolved into, it's almost more about the co-commentator talking about the game than the commentator describing it.
Yeah, the color rather than the commentator.
That's right. Yep. And I always found that irksome. You can hear the crowd are going wild because something's happening, and you're thinking, but I don't know, because they're chatting about something else. Now, I'll chat about other things, but I feel it's crucial that when there's anything going on, you shouldn't. So I've always felt I'm very descriptive because I feel I'm the listener's eyes. I have to tell them faithfully as I can what I'm doing. And then also for the same reason, I want to try to give a sense of where the ball is on the pitch. So I'll be referring, when the ball's off for a throw, I'm always on 10 yards out, left-hand side. I'm always doing that because I want people to have a sort of sense of geography. And then I suppose, I'm glad you say I can be quite calming. It's funny, actually, reaction to me in terms of tone. People either say, how do you keep so calm? Or how do you get so excited? Everyone seems to see me as one or other extreme, which I think hopefully means I'm balanced. But I try to moderate my tone and pace. When the ball's in midfield and nothing's happening, I'll describe it, but I won't be sounding excited because I want people to be able to sense by the pitch what is something about to happen. I get really, it happened the other day. can't remember what game it was. Someone scored sort of out of the blue, and I was really annoyed at myself because I felt I'd gone from gentle little chit chat sort of description, not much is happening, to, oh, he's a 10, and I know sometimes football goes like that, sport goes like that. Someone does something out of nothing, but I feel like I've got a responsibility to ease you into it, to make you have a sense of something could happen here. Hang on, do you know what I mean? But in terms of actual, sorry.
You definitely keep us on the edge of our seat for sure. You definitely do. The buildup is great, and it's just so. But critiquing yourself in that way is very interesting. I mean, that you're mindful of that, and it's very well done. And not to, sorry, that's why I call you the Velvet Hammer. I will say it all. Yeah, very, very well. I think that might have been. I think that might have been the Elliott Lee score the other day that came from Longman that you're talking about.
I think. I'm not sure. I think it was at the racecourse. It might have been Mullins at Blackpool, against Blackpool, which was also made difficult by the fog. Because, I mean, to be honest with you, the Blackpool goal in the first minute, I couldn't see it. I just couldn't see it. I could see the ball was on the far side from me, and I could see some bodies moving around. And I don't really like it when commentators start to sort of set up, oh, I can't see this, so it's not my fault, I'm not doing it properly. I feel you've got to try as best you can to soldier on. And I could see vaguely where the ball must be, but I couldn't see the ball. And then when it came in, the fog was thicker at the start than any other point. I still couldn't see the ball. I could see the guy who scored running in. And I'm thinking, well, it must be a cross. Okay, I can say this confidently. And then I didn't see him make contact with the ball. I didn't see the ball at any point. But then he immediately wheels around, and the Blackpool fans making a noise. And I'm thinking, well, it's a goal. I didn't see it, but it's a goal. But then Mullin's one sort of happened quite suddenly, again over on that foggy side of the pitch. And the funny thing is, I'm looking at it and just thinking positionally, I thought Rathbone had made a run ahead, and I thought that was Rathbone. Now, I love Ollie Rathbone. I really love Ollie Rathbone. But when he takes it on his chest and then hits it on the drop, on the volley over the keeper into the far top corner, I'm about to say Rathbone, and I'm thinking, can Ollie Rathbone do that? I'm not sure he can. And I looked across, and I'm mouthing to Mia, Mullin, but silently, Mullin? And she's like, yes. And she's thinking, poor old bloke. And so I was able, but I was a bit annoyed about that as well, because I was conscious of the fact Mullin hadn't scored for a while, that when Mullin scored, it'll be a big deal. And I wanted to give it that when he scored. And I couldn't, because I wasn't sure it was him. I said, my logical part of my brain was saying, that must be Mullin. He does that. But that was also what I'd seen or thought I'd seen. I think Rathbone's just made that run. That's Rathbone, isn't it? So, I was annoyed about that, to be honest. I am very conscious of it, and I'm very conscious of mistakes. I feel like as I get older, I start saying the wrong name for an opposing team, and I'm to jump back. I don't feel I did that a couple of years ago, if I'm honest with you. But, that's age for you.
You can always go back to Bloody 7 and Bloody number 10, and you can always fall back on that if you need to. Really
I could, couldn't I? You're absolutely right.
I was going to talk about Mullin later. Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
No, please carry on. Come on.
Yeah, you brought up Mullin there too, and I was going to talk about the players a little later, but you brought up Mullin, and let's be fair, he went through a major surgery over the summer, and I want to get your thoughts on him. And like I said, I was going to bring this up later, but because it's we were talking about him scoring, he's not scoring this season, and then he's a legend. He's an absolute legend. Do you have a thought on what's going on behind this with him? Because he shows flashes of just like, oh, there's it, but he's not putting things away. But is there thoughts in your head of anything that you think about Paul?
Personally, I think that you've already hit the nail on the head. He missed preseason. He missed the preseason before that as well. And preseasons are important for conditioning. I think that's ironically, part of the reason people are judging him harshly this season is because he adapted so well to not having a preseason last season. He clearly wasn't right until the last 10 or so games of the season, but he managed somehow to keep ticking along and chipping in goals. And then the last 10, he did look himself, and he was superb. And that sort of, I think that was genuinely phenomenal. And this season, it's a bit more realistic that he's not quite been right. He's had a couple of other niggling injuries as well, including this shin problem he's got now. So that's not helped him in terms of continuity. But the way I look at it, and I'm relieved to say Andy Morrell agrees with me because he knows all about scoring goals. I just feel, you hear some people, people love to jump in, the sort of the bar room expert and say, it's this and that, And so you get an awful lot now of, well, he's gone up a level too high. Oh, he can't cope. I mean, that is such errant nonsense, absolute rubbish. If he was anonymous, I'd be thinking, all right, maybe everyone's got their ceiling. But when he's been playing this season, he's clearly not physically right, but he's not anonymous. He comes on, he has quite an impact in terms of his movement, in terms of his energy. It's just, and he gets into goal scoring positions, which is the big thing. If you're getting into those goal scoring positions constantly, they'll start to go in. And yeah, I just feel like, okay, he has missed some easy chances and chances that he would normally finish. But at least he's not failing to get into those positions, failing to trouble the other side. Sometimes you just get a run of bad luck. Sometimes you get a run of bad form in terms of how well you're shooting. Sometimes maybe it gets into your head a bit. I can't comment on that. Everyone loves trying to psychoanalyze sports people, don't they? I think that's a mug's game myself. But
they're like, answer, this is what it is. I get it. Yeah. I mean, they're armchair, but the bar, at the 2-3 beers in at the end of the bar, like, I know what's wrong with Paul Mullin, but to your point, he hasn't not gotten into positions, and his cross that he put in for Aaron James, I think it was for the Virtue Trophy Cup, was phenomenal. He's putting himself in positions, and everyone's like, he'll come good, and I think it's he's a great player, and I'm really it's really part of just growth process. I think
his commitment to us has been superb. I mean, obviously he's gained a lot from being with us as well, but it is a genuine quid pro quo. He's good for us, we're good for him. And I think this is the way I tend to operate. That guy's done a heck of a lot, bringing all the best times for us. I reckon we ought to cut him a bit of slack and be patient rather than overreact because this isn't going quite as well as it should do. Personally, I feel worst case scenario with Mullin is he might not get firing this season, but next season you'll get a proper preseason in, and he'll be back to the sort of levels you'd expect. Personally, I think that's the worst case scenario. But then, to be fair, Smith and Rodriguez coming in has really given us strong options up front now. So there's no pressure on Mullin to have to be the man who scores the goals, and that's a good thing too. But I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season he's back having another good run in, to be honest with you.
I agree with you there too. And another striker and that does divide opinion is Ollie Palmer. And I've been critical of, I call him sometimes a utility striker. He does a job out there. And I think the two signings have changed the team's dynamic for sure, because it allows Elliot Lee to go back in the midfield. So it helped our forwards out and our midfield out. What's your take on Ollie Palmer and his work effort for this side?
I like Palmer a lot. I think in a way, some of the criticism he's had has been more down to the fact that the people by him aren't scoring goals. And that's a bit simplistic. Hear me out. The 1998 World Cup, right? Everyone makes fun of the French striker. It became a real figure of fun. A guy called Stéphane Guivache. He was a big, strong fella. He did a lot of the things Ollie Palmer does. I would say Palmer, at his level, looks better technically than Guivache. His French team was packed full of magnificent all-time greats: Zidane, Djorkaeff, Thuram. Oh, magnificent team. They win the World Cup. But Guivache looks like, why the heck is he in that team? Well, the truth of the matter was because he did the Ollie Palmer roughing up job for other players around him. In this case, not another striker, really. Although Henry was in that squad, Thierry Henry. But they had so many good attacking players who could get into those positions. And to win the World Cup, you've got to perform in 7 games. So he didn't score the World Cup, but it was okay because he did an important job of making the ball stick so that those attacking players can all get up into the other half. he wasn't dangerous, really. He wasn't very skillful, but that what he did offer was valuable. Now, to me, in a way, I'm really being reductionist here because Palmer's been a lot more than that for us.
Yep.
But if the goals don't come like they haven't this season, if we've got a guy feeding off him and scoring 30 goals, Mullin, it doesn't matter that he's not getting many. The issue for him is that I think he's continued to work hard. I think there have been games where he's got the better of centre backs. I think he does, even though we got the 2 new strikers, he has a different skill set than the other strikers we got still, because he's the one who can actually fight their centre backs with physical presence.
He's a big unit. He's a big boy. He's a very big
Fletcher's
boy.
big, and Fletcher's phenomenal in the air. And Fletcher can do that, but he's more likely, because he's fabulous. I love Fletcher. He's more likely to be timing his jump and trying to beat a player to it, whereas Palmer can rub up against him if you rough him up.
Yeah, just kind of
different way of physically dominating in the air. And I do think that's a valuable thing for a team to have, because actually Andy Morrell used to do this quite a bit when he was manager. He had a lot of very hard-working strikers, and if they weren't able to get the breakthrough, they would at least wear down the opposing centre-backs, and then he would bring on some other strikers, and they'd benefit against tired centre-backs. Or we had a winger, Adrian Cislevic, who plays for TNS now. He's been playing in Europe this season, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And, okay, he was a little bit up and down, but he was very, very quick, very direct. And if those centre-backs had been worn down, he'd have fun. He used to score a lot of goals as a substitute and a lot of assists as a substitute, because he was running at tired big lumps and they couldn't cope with it. So, I do think Palmer fulfills that. I think he's battled well. I think it's instructive to me as well that Andy and Mia both, I think, feel that he's done all right. I don't get the sense from them that he's not done enough. But because Mullin's not scoring goals, it then becomes an issue that he isn't either. And I think that puts a different slant on it. I've got to say as well, there've definitely been at least a couple of occasions this season where we've not brought him off because he's really good at the other end of set pieces. He gets his head onto so many corners and free kicks. And
so many.
Definitely.
A
couple of games where Mo Farl, you think, bring him on now. And we didn't, because Farl hasn't got that. I'm not knocking Farl, but hasn't got that presence in our own penalty area to be, as Andy Morrell again describes it, the free guy, the player who will just attack the ball and will win it. Farl's a different type of player in the air. I noticed we have made that sub a couple of times recently, so I think that's part of Farl's progress.
Yes.
He's more reliable in that role now, which is what we said we'd buy him for, to develop him as a project.
Yeah, and I enjoy watching Mo Farl, and he's divided the opinion a little bit too. And I'm like, he's 22 years old, just turned. We thought we were getting a Palmer, but I think we're getting a Berbatov, or a Mullin type thing. That's my, and he's one for the future. And I'm really excited to see what he can do. And maybe you've changed my mind on Ollie Palmer, but he's, but he's great. I do have a question here from Matt Al, part of our community, by the way. This is totally just asking about this.
I got to be honest, I prefer Mad Al to Sane Al. Sane Al, a bore, isn't he? Mad Al. There's that bit of wild card about him.
He's a local, by the way. You've probably run into him. I'm sure he's going to walk up to you next week and say something. He said, can you elaborate on the legend of the shit purple jumper?
Not much, sadly. I'll give you what I can. Yeah. But you know what? The problem...
I don't know what that means. I have no clue. I have no clue what that means. No clue.
I'll give you the basics.
Okay.
But I think the legendary aspect, other people are far better placed to tell you about it.
Okay.
I know what it is, but one of the drawbacks of commentating, of course, is I'm not in the crowd. Yeah. And some of that crowd culture does pass me by. Okay. So basically what happened was that
I have no idea what this means. I have no clue. Okay.
Well, here's my Wikipedia entry for it. Okay. It'll be a bit dry. We were playing Newport County.
Okay.
Which, all right, you classify. It's a Welsh derby. We have rivalry because we're Welsh, but they're a long way away. It's not that hot a game. And I'm sure it was a game at Wrexham, and they turned up with quite a fair number of fans, I think, as I recall. And were a little bit feisty, so the Wrexham fans were responding. Their cheerleader seemed to be a bloke who was standing at the front, who was, wait for it, wearing a purple jumper.
Okay.
And I this might be the Mandela effect. I have a picture in my head of this guy, which might be just me creating it from people telling me the story. So he's the man at the front giving it loads, and like he's on his own having a go at the Wrexham fans. All the Wrexham fans having to go by, and he's all provocative. I think, I may be wrong, I think in the end the police feel he's being too provocative and they eject him from the ground. I could be making that up. But anyway, the Wrexham fans are taunting him by singing, "Shit purple jumper. You've got a shit purple jumper." And this is just one of those beautiful, odd little things that happen and sticks in the memory.
Yeah.
Like the massive floodlights thing, I think is not much more than us just bragging that we've got massive floodlights because they were big. The current ones are bigger. And, Chester's ground doesn't have floodlights. They're on the roof. So we can laugh at them. I mean, it's trivial, but it's fun. I think it's that sort of thing.
I was so reluctant to ask that question, but I was so reluctant to ask you that question.
But there's more to it, I'm sure. And people who were involved laughing at him, I'm sure would be able to really bring it to life. But that's what I'm aware of. Well, some of my favorites. I'm sure you've seen reference to Jacko, who's an old legendary Wrexham fan, and he was a heck of a character. And he was in a choir, and he and his mates in the choir would, after practice, apparently practice songs for Wrexham games, and then turn up and everyone sings along with Jacko. Basically, a very piercing voice that you could hear no matter how big the crowd. And some of my favourite moments of him, which I think illustrate that quirky. I think that's a very important part of football culture in Britain, is the quirkiness, embracing the quirkiness of it. Maybe in the modern social media age, it's died off a touch. But certainly my generation, part of it was like, let's do something daft, and it gives it identity, And so he would do things like sing, "If you've only got one arm, clap your hands," and then do that. And then everybody would sing along, and we'd all be clapping with one arm. It's beautiful. Or once I remember very clearly, we were playing Bristol Rovers at Bath because they had no ground. Bath is not that far away. Oh, it was a horrible day. I was in the away end. The sun was beating down in Britain. I mean, nobody was prepared for this, and there was no roof. And it was uncomfortable, and we were terrible. We really didn't turn up, and we were getting hammered. And so he decides that the away end needs to entertain itself. And so he starts singing "The Lord's My Shepherd." And his mates all join in. And then the whole away end, who are bored and disgruntled, think this would be more fun than watching that game. So the whole away end is singing "The Lord's My Shepherd." You can see the Bristol Rovers fans are all like, what's going on over there? And then he shouts rap version. And his mates know what to expect. And so they start rapping "The Lord, my shepherd, I'll not," and so everyone joins in. And it was great fun. And it was a proper away day. We lost. But
lost. Yeah, but you remember that.
Lost. Yeah, no, man. They're often the things you remember best. Things like in the 80s, there was a craze which Grimsby Town started for bringing inflatable objects, giant inflatable objects, to the ground, which Grimsby started because they're a fishing port. And so they started coming with enormous inflatable haddocks. If you YouTube it, there are some wonderful footage of like Grimsby at an away game, and you can barely see the fans because they're all got haddocks and just all these weird inflatables waving about. And then other teams would catch up, and Grimsby were the great ones for it. But so yeah, British football fans tend to embrace that peculiar quirkiness a little bit. Certainly used to, still do. But I think maybe social media alters it slightly, doesn't it? It's more, can we get, can we go viral, sort of thing. And
people want to hit that up a little bit too. I get it too.
Yeah.
And on that note, you have a fantastic commentary team, and I wonder what you do in your spare time. I know you're right as well. Do the final whistle, and I'd love to know your game day routine. But more importantly, I was thinking, just said that about the crowd and about the town and about Wrexham.
Mm.
Do you have a sense of responsibility? Do you feel to the supporters, especially global now and locally, to the job that you do, which I feel is insanely important, and also just an amazing thing that we get to share with you over the years. So do you have a sense of responsibility for the fans that you have doing the job?
That's really kind of you to say. I mean, I'm going to give a yes answer, but I honestly think that the truth is I'm not important enough to have a responsibility like that in terms of importance. However, I do feel I need to do my bit right. So on that basis, I've always, I used to bridle a little bit because years ago, this is the club website used to describe, the commentary as, you can listen to the fabulously biased commentary of Mark Griffiths. And I think, I'm really not intending to be biased.
Yeah.
I mean, I am in one regard. I know my audience is Wrexham fans, and I know I'm commentating for Wrexham fans, and I therefore am deliberately slanting it towards discussing us. I mean, it'd be peculiar of me to start talking about the form of Bolton's centre-back when I haven't seen him playing this season. So in that regard, I'm definitely biased. But I hope I'm not biased. I certainly don't intend to be when it comes to saying what's actually happening. I feel I would do a massive disservice to people who are listening if I start talking about how well we're playing if we're not, or playing down the danger of opposing attacks, playing up the threat of our attacks. So in that sense, I think I've got a responsibility in a very direct way. I think you said in the intro, you said most things about me in the intro. My degree is modern history. I think that does affect my sensibility quite a bit. I've always been aware of the idea of trying to tell the story, if you will, and trying to put things into context. The incredible good fortune for me, and it is good fortune, is that the way I envisaged commentating, like I said before, looking for it to be different, was that it's embedded in the culture of the game, of the town, in the history of the game, of the town. It's inescapable. It's important. It's what makes us different from somebody else.
True.
And so I've always seen that. And I always felt, and this is one of the weird influences on me, I said you wouldn't expect where my influences come from. Baseball.
Yes.
There was a spell about, probably about 20 years ago. Sounds about right. Derek Jeter, that sort of era.
I'm a Yankee
Ernie
fan.
Williams. Yeah?
Yep. I know very well.
O'Neill. I'm just trying to get in my memory. Posada. My memory's coming back. This is great.
Yeah, look at that.
That's not bad, is it? The big unit.
The big unit. Yep.
In that era, one of the British TV channels picked up baseball because it wasn't getting shown in Britain. They would apart from the World Series, they would just show one game live on a Sunday night. And I used to, if I had the chance, I'd make the effort to record and watch it because I just found it fascinating. And one of the things that really struck me was that there was, and I think this is actually true in general. I know it's stereotyping. I think it's generally true of America compared to here, of a greater interest in history and where this is coming from. I think in Britain, and I'm saying this as a historian to an extent, we take our history for granted. We're quite blasé about it. It goes back so far. And if you go up to the person in the street and ask them any question about history, which isn't about World War One, World War Two, the Tudors, or 1066, they won't be able to fill the gaps in, genuinely. Whereas American people, I think in general, are much more inquisitive about that sort of thing. And I always thought, you look at baseball and you draw it all back and people know all these great old names. Whereas in British football, there's this overwhelming desire to say that football started in 1992 when the Premier League started. They keep talking about Premier League records. And it's like, well, all right, Premier League records, but the Football League started in 1888. It's the same competition.
Yeah.
Those are the records, not post 1992. Funnily enough, last week on Match of the Day, Gary Lineker made the same points because they were showing all these goal-scoring records.
Yeah.
And his career essentially finished 1992. And they were showing, he's a superb striker. And they were showing like the top goal scorers. And he said, it's a pity football began in 1992, isn't it? And he's right. So I've always thought, talk about the history of it. Talk about the past of Wrexham. There's so many amazing stories.
It gives it so much depth to it too, and just the history. And you bring up baseball, like it's one of the best pastimes, and it's I love it. I am a Yankees fan. You did name the players. That's my era of watching them too. My grandfather and my father loved the Yankees, and and you talked about history too in there too. And I was listening to an interview you had, and it was after the takeover, and you talked about talking about Rob and Ryan coming in, and before the takeover, you mentioned about the town, which I thought was very poignant. You said that it took people from outside Wrexham to feel like there was a lot of value and worth, but there are amazing things here. And I thought that was really poignant because you've been through the highs and the lows, and I'm sure you can name your highs and your lows. But can you feel a difference around the town, because you've been through this 15 years in the National League and coming up in such an amazing fashion. But do you think there's a change happening like right now, or are we just getting to the start of it?
I hope both. That would be great. It really is a different place. It really, really is. And it's wonderful. I think that beyond all the concrete benefits that Rob and Ryan have brought, they've boosted our self-esteem immensely. I can't tell you. Really, I mean, again, I apologize. I do repeat myself, but as a teacher, I used to get the sense that a lot of kids were, the plan would be to get out of here when they got their education. I don't want to put that too strongly, but the sense that if you really want to achieve something, you're going to have to do it somewhere else. Now you get the sense that this is where it's happening. I had a lovely email from a parent of a pupil who I had a lot of time for. I was ahead of year, and so you'd sort of be in charge of the discipline and the pastoral support side of a whole year group. And I loved that job because I felt that if you showed enough respect to the pupils, that actually sorted out the discipline side of it. If you showed respect, made it clear where the line is and say, don't cross it. And if you do, this will be the punishment you get. They'll understand, they accept it. Mostly they'll stay within the line. If not, they'll accept the punishment. And then you can focus a lot more on the pastoral supportive side of things. And bless her, she's a lovely girl. And the parent sends us smashing emails, sort of saying, you'd be glad to hear she's doing really well. She's gone to university. And she said, it's brilliant because she's being treated like a celebrity. They ask her where she comes from. She says, Wrexham. And I mean, what's it like? Have you met Ryan? And it was wonderful for her. She goes out there and, immediately she's a superstar. And it does feel a bit like that. It really does. I did a Final Whistle Weekly about a year or two ago where I interviewed a local business owner to talk about exactly this, the effect on the town. She was saying that she was one of a group of Wrexham entrepreneurs who about 5 years earlier had all said they wanted to start businesses in Wrexham to help the town, but none of them were going to because it just wouldn't work. And she said now 5 years later on, they've all got businesses in Wrexham because the place is different. And there's still a lot of boarded up shops and different things like that, but that's because this is 2025. That's a worldwide phenomenon, sadly, isn't it? But
nothing happens overnight too, and nothing happens overnight. We're on the journey. I think Humphrey Carr, when he pitched it to Rob, or he definitely said this. He said about buying into the club. He said it was a sleeping giant. Wrexham are a sleeping giant. And I now looking back, and you can probably even know this more than I do. It was about the whole town and not just the club. So I think that's part of the story.
100%. And I again, as well as I do, it's not coincidental that when they get a major investor who joins the board. It's people like the Allen family who have the record of not just doing things in business, but doing things in communities. And it's funny, when I first heard about them buying a stake, the way it was put was Rob and Ryan made it a prerequisite that they also were putting something into the community. But the more I hear, I think it's more just that both parties agreed they have to make a contribution to the community, and I do like that. I think that's wonderful. But yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day.
No.
But the place is different. There are little funny things that I noticed. Like I noticed a few years back, people don't react when there are TV crews in the town centre anymore.
It's just,
it used to be a TV crew. Whoa, look at that! Now everyone's just whatever. We're just so used to it. Although I got to say, the Welcome to Wrexham people are brilliant, and they are so unobtrusive. I was saying this after they came round last night, that they all seem really genuinely nice people. All the people working, all the crew, and they are such good people. You can see how they can embed themselves in the football ground. There's no friction. I mean, they're treated like part of the furniture. They're all friends with the people in the club. And they're just so good with other people, nice with other people, that it makes it seamless. But I mean, a big chip on my shoulder, and most people from Wrexham's shoulder, is that we're in Wales, but everything's in South Wales. The media most certainly is biased in terms of South Wales. The money gets put into South Wales. There are bigger towns than there are up north. I accept that. But it is a bit irksome. So now we even occasionally get the BBC Wales cameras up here. Ooh, how exciting is that?
It's big time.
It'd be like, wow, they've actually noticed we're up here. Gosh, that's a bit of a shock.
I follow BBC Wales on my account, so I mean, it definitely made an impression on me. And you talked about the Welcome to Wrexham crew, and I think it's I've had a chance to meet them here a few times, and they're fantastic people. And you're absolutely right. It's like I said, nothing happens in a day. Overnight. So they've done great. And there is a question here from Susan about Susan Loomis, by the way, about Welcome to Wrexham documentary. What's the filming process for you for Welcome to Wrexham? Is it fun? We love seeing your presence there. That's from Susan Loomis.
Huge fun, absolutely massive fun. It tends to be they use. Okay, let's go back to the start. They asked if they could use my commentary, and initially there was a thought that I might do some narration, which has not really happened all that much. And I agree it shouldn't, because I think the commentator's voice might be confusing if it's also a narrator's voice. So I think that's correct, personally. I've been incredibly flattered, I've got to be honest, that almost all the commentary you hear is the genuine commentary at the time.
Yes, it is.
And I'm so flattered that people who know what they're doing have done that. Because, I actually even said before the first season was out, I remember saying to one of Rob's people who'd come over, what I hate about these flying the ball football documentaries is when you can tell the commentator did the commentary in a booth 6 months later and wasn't even there and didn't care about the club. It feels so obvious to me. And the way they still sort of set up the next thing that's going to happen with it. So I was thrilled that I've done a couple like that, but they haven't tended to be anything more than we didn't have a very good audio on that goal, or I was asleep, and then somebody went, "Oh, Ollie Rathbone, no, Mullin."
Mullin.
We probably do that better. Yeah, exactly. "No, it's foggy. I'm frightened. I'm old." So I was really delighted with that, and so I do some. I'll get lines throughout the season, maybe to put in a bit of context of certain things, but generally it would just be that. And then in terms of actually appearing on camera, apart from the camera they sometimes have next to us when we're commentating, which can be fun, we did they came to my school last season, and that was funny. Although of course I did try to explain to the kids every season they will film hundreds upon hundreds of hours of footage, and only a little bit will get in. So there's a really strong chance that, you know, you stood in front of a camera, you won't get on. And actually, that was the case. Funnily enough, they filmed me taking a lesson, and they also then interviewed me in there as well. And they did a bit of, you know, obviously some establishing shots around the school. One lad in my class that was taught by me when it was filmed, smart. He'd obviously worked out a cute line. And so we were going around and just chatting to them. And he says to them, I didn't realize, I can't hear what the kids are saying. He says, well, it's incredible, so much international interest, because a year ago, most people outside Britain thought Wales was a big fish. And it's a great line. It's a great line. Well done, mate. And that's on at the very start of the second season.
Yeah.
But that's all that's used from that day of filming, apart from a little bit of me talking about things, just me individually. So I did try to warn the kids. So we did have fun days like that. That was God. The kids are so excited by it. You know, it was lovely to see.
It's magic. It's totally magical.
Yeah.
It's like it's magical. It really, even sitting here in it's magical. You can't. I hate to say you can't write it, but you can't write it. You really can't.
Yeah.
And long may continue, by the way. Long may continue.
Absolutely. We've done a couple of things as well. They've come here to do some just chatting and talking about how the season is going, things like that. And it's lovely, but they're really nice people. It's nice to welcome them to my house. And Emma, my wife, got me an amazing coffee machine for Christmas, so I was delighted to make coffee for people. It's quite the thing. Believe me.
I think that is the magic. What makes this show, because Rob and Ryan said, there's millions and thousands of stories to tell in the town, and just even hearing that about the young man talking about Wales and coming into your house. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, and that's what makes this magical. And that's why I think they just hit something that can't be recreated. You can't bottle. If you can bottle up and sell, it'd be awesome. Put it in our veins too.
And I was suggesting earlier that, ironically, this sort of cultural historical bent that I have fits beautifully with a new audience, and that also fits in with something that I remember the first time Rob and Ryan came over to Britain. Well, I came to Wrexham for the first time, and they said that. I think Ryan, who said sport is a story, sport is a soap opera. 100%. It's a narrative. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, good, because I've felt that all along. I'm not the only one. Yeah. I felt a bit like people, like I said, sometimes say, how do you stay calm? Why aren't you going nuts? Why aren't you being angry at things? And I think a big part of it is because I see football that way. We'll have low times and it'll get better, and then it'll probably get worse. That's how sport works. It's a story. And at the moment we're having the insane, I don't even say it's a once in a lifetime story. It's much rarer than that. But we're having the crazy happy story, and it's wonderful. But if I could put that to context, sorry, as a teenager, and I was going to flatter myself and say younger, but I'm wrong. Watching Wrexham. Oh, actually, I was younger. The 1980s. It's just after our peak, our previous peak, and we are dreadful for an entire decade. And ironically, of course, that's when the town is also suffering. Thatcher's government, places like Wrexham, who are reliant on older industries, are really getting hit horribly. So that's also when Wrexham, the town, declines massively. But you're watching really poor football throughout the 80s. And my fantastic fact is that the 10 lowest average attendances ever in our history are the 10 years of the 80s.
Wow.
Most of the years of the 80s, on average, we're getting fewer than 2,000 people to the games. So we're suffering. We're really suffering. It starts with us declining into League Two from the Championship, and then we stay generally in the bottom half of League Two. And at the end of the 80s, we've been in the playoffs once. So that's a whole season of decline and then just flatlining. We nearly drop out of League Two at one point as well. We have this miraculous recovery. And then the next year we do finish bottom, but luckily, due to an administrative issue, there's no relegation that year. Anyway, so that's the 80s.
Yeah.
When we then beat Arsenal in 1992, which I can't even mention without laughing because it's just ludicrous. You know, for me, I'm sort of amongst all the glee. I'm thinking, oh, I've earned this. And I guess that's why I feel you can see it in the long term and see it as a story. It's not just this is amazing. It's I've suffered for 12 years, but this makes it feel all worth it because we've just done something absolutely insane, and that will be with me every day of my life. Now we beat Arsenal. Rare occasion, exactly. Rare occasion you meet a kid who supports Arsenal. Oh boy. Field day.
They actually brought it up the other day. They were talking about a talk sport when Plymouth beat Liverpool the other day. They brought up Arsenal, and on that, you
said though that I mean, and far be it from me to suggest that what we did was better. But Plymouth are a championship team. There's only one division lower down, and Liverpool picked their children. It was bring your child to work day, that Liverpool team, wasn't it? Whereas in those days, in '92. You picked your full strength team in the FA Cup. So that was the Arsenal team that was playing in the Premier League, with one, to be fair, important exception, which was that Ian Wright, who became a legendary striker for them, had signed for them too late that season and couldn't play in the game. So that was the only. So that's one player missing, whereas Liverpool had 11 players missing, didn't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're better. That's that.
We did it. And it's funny. I talk about those, going through the rough times and down. When we got promoted twice now, which we'll talk about getting promoted. Hopefully, we'll talk about that in a second. How badly did you not want to drop the mic and rush the field? I'm surprised you did. We had a live show and I was listening to you and I was watching it live and I'm like, he's going to drop the mic and run on the pitch. Like he totally is. How much as a supporter your entire life watching it coming out of the doldrums like you just mentioned there did you not feel like, I gotta get on the pitch?
Ironically, I think part of the drawback of doing the commentating, I think it makes me even temperamented because I am also aware I've got a job to do.
Yes.
And so I've always said I think it means the highs don't feel quite so high for me when they're happening. But then the lows don't feel quite so low because I've got to carry on and tell people what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's funny. The first one sort of crept up on me. Obviously, I knew we had to win. Don't get me wrong. But I remember very clearly looking at the clock and we were like defending at the end. And I looked at the clock and we had the ball and there were 8 seconds of added time left. And I thought, actually, we've done it, haven't we? We're all right now. They're not going to score in 8 seconds. We're okay. And that was the point where it sort of hit me. But then I had to quickly, I then had 8 seconds. I was like, what am I going to say? When we get promoted? What's like? I don't like people preparing lines because it's so obvious as far as I'm concerned. So I was like, okay, something to say for us achieving this crazy thing. It'll be, and I think I just said nothing because I was sort of, one of the co-commentators was talking, and I think I was just like, so, whoa, just sitting there, thinking, we've done it, letting it sink in. I also knew, I know this is ironic, because there was obviously a plan in place for if we did win, and I knew I would be allowed on the pitch.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
So I guess in a way, my logical brain didn't say, drop the mic and get down there. My logical brain was saying, once they clear all the fans, I'll be down there. So that was kind of cool. And then the second one actually did feel quite odd last season.
Yes.
Because if you remember, it didn't. We went into that Forest Green game looking like
a lot had to happen. There was a lot of stuff that
happened.
And they started crowding the pitch. Remember? Oh yeah.
I mean, you sort of felt. Before that game, I'm thinking we're in a very good position to get up now. I think we'll be okay, but it won't be today because too many, even if we do our job, which we should, there are too many other things that have to fall into place. But weirdly, they all fell into place. Well, we got our job done very quickly. That game was over after about 20 minutes. So that made it strange. But then you start paying attention to the other results coming in, and you're realizing, actually, this is all going our way. And I can't remember the exact detail, but one of the other games dies pretty quickly. One of the teams that we need to lose are losing and have a player sent off, and they're about 2 goals down. Yeah. And it's like, hang on, this is happening. And so that was quite odd, because after about an hour, you're thinking, oh, barring a disaster, we've done it. I can't take this for granted, but do you know what I mean? It was a peculiar sort of rolling experience of gradually coming to terms with the fact, oh, we have actually done this. It wasn't that sudden final whistle. It was,
there was a sense of you were there, but was it? You could probably feel it in the crowd, right? You could feel the crowd, So because I was watching, listening to you, I was like, oh, we're gonna do this. I think was it Mansfield? I'm not sure who it was, but like things were happening around, and you could see it happening. I was listening to you, like there's a lot going on in the crowd. I remember you saying that specifically, which is interesting. But I was like, oh, he's gonna.
I remember thinking that was a very important part of my job. Was that obviously I can keep an eye on the scores, but to reflect how the crowd are reacting became more important than it would normally be in a game which was competitive, because our game, we won 6-0. It wasn't competitive, but the important stuff was going on elsewhere. And I remember thinking, I've got to reflect that. I've got to show that's, that this is part of this day, if you will. Again, that the sort of vague idea I've got of recording the history almost. You know what I mean? I want to be talking about that, not just so and so gives it to so and so, and I'm trying to reflect that. So it was wonderful, but it was strange it wasn't a sudden, dramatic, exciting home run, knockout punch, diving header. It was very much a sort of gradual realization of everything I don't have to be worried here. Everything's going just fine. That sort of nice, warm feeling.
Yeah, nice warm. It gave me chills. There's 2 times you guys gave me chills and goosebumps. One was the Foz save, Notts County. Okay, and 2 was that day against Forest Green. Those were days. Yeah, and I'm so happy.
That Foster save, I did lose my mind a little bit then, just a little bit. Because I tried to stay calm, but when they've got that penalty, I was going, oh no. And so I was thinking, oh, this is so frustrating. We had it.
Yeah.
And then he steps up and hits it, and Foster saves it.
Yeah.
And I become obsessed, because I'm just obsessed with we must not concede. So obviously I'm delighted Foster saved it, but where's the ball gone next? Yeah. I think I'm a bit of a fatalist like that. But where's the rebound? We scored, watching a Premier League game. Hey, we scored, but VAR. That's my first thought whenever I see a goal in Premier League. So I'm thinking, where's it gone now? I don't want to be excited. No, they scored the rebound. And I remember O'Connell got to it first, and I said it was O'Connell. A Wrexham player got to it first and smashed it onto the building site behind the cop, as if to say, if I kick it as far away as possible, the game can't restart almost.
Right. Yeah. There was nothing there. There was nothing back there. Right? Yes.
I commentated on that.
Yeah.
I was like so excited that they will not score from the rebound. And and it wasn't O'Connell. I think it was O'Connor or somebody. It was I've got the wrong player, definitely.
Number 22. I think it was Stats, number 22. O'Connor. Yeah.
But I was just like, if the ball's you saved it. The ball's in the cup. The ball's in the cup. And people must be thinking, well, you're all right, mate. But I was so obsessed with this idea of that ball must not go into our net. And then, of course, what people then forget is that when they finally took the subsequent corner, they nearly scored. I mean, Foster's save obviously is phenomenal, but I think it was Elliot Lee, wasn't it, on the post, heads it off the line. So
big Elliot,
they still could have got there. But I've got goosebumps now.
I know, right?
I was. It's going to hit a cement mixer. No, it's dropped on a trowel.
It's a story.
This is the end of football.
Yeah, this is what we love. Yeah, it's like the Sandlot. Just let it. Put it over there. Never come back.
There's a man in a high vis jacket. He's going to fetch the ball.
That was one of my things. It was always when they were putting they were redoing the temp cop. I was like, there's just one guy or gal out there in the jacket, and like he's got the best seat in the house because no one's bothering him. Yeah. So I remember that for sure. Yeah.
I used to see all sorts of weird things like that. That's something I like to bring in because I think, well, if I've noticed anything, that's odd. I wouldn't be able to mention it. Sure. One of the oddest places that we went to in the National League, which was, I mean, obviously we needed to get out a lot quicker than we did. Well, I thought that. I don't now because Rob and Ryan wouldn't have come along if we got straight back out again. So now, with hindsight, again, it's a great story. But one of the strange places I went to, amongst many, was Salisbury down south. Hell of a trek to get to Salisbury. And I remember I managed to make it in one day on the train once, which was quite a feat, despite the fact that coming back, somebody in Newport again, somebody had stolen some wiring and all the trains weren't running north of Newport.
Oh, wow.
I said, what sort of theft is that? And they had to pay for taxis, actually, to take everyone on from Wolverhampton. Or we went a sort of weird route. And then, sorry, that was a long day. But it was an odd place. It was right in the middle of farming land. And behind the goal was basically like a fence, like a garden. Well, sorry, down the sides of the pitch, a fence like a garden fence. And you could stand in front of it. And behind it was just fields, just, and crops. And not against us, although I wish it had happened against us. They were actually playing Chester.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, one of those guys, like in the Riddick Bowe fight, when the fan man comes in with his fan. Yeah. One of those guys just lands in the penalty area while the game's going on. And it was obviously, he'd sort of like lost control or whatever. He could see a big green area he could land safely in, so he did it. But there was a professional football match going on at the time. And it's like, well, weird places like that. I kind of missed them. I have no idea why that came into my mind then. I'm so sorry. But it definitely, it was weird as well. Because... Oh, go on.
Yeah, I remember the Riddick Bowe thing fly in. And then oddly enough, people in the crowd started hitting him. I'm like, what are you hitting him for? He just crashed, So I hope that didn't happen on the pitch for those guys.
No, he got a much better reception. And far be it from me to encourage violence.
Yes, of course.
Was that actually all? No, actually, I'm going to make a fool of myself. I finished that sentence. I just realized. But the guy, it was deliberate, wasn't it? With the fight?
Definitely, he definitely did delivery.
So,
he definitely did.
I can understand people getting a bit annoyed, especially if he spilled their drink. Because let's be honest, I mean, if you're front row in Caesar's Palace, that drink costs quite a lot of money, I suspect. You're gonna have to find a mob tailor to replace those pants. A sentence I've never said before.
Yeah, right. I had two more topics that I wanted to talk about too. One was one was Parkinson and the cop, but you had mentioned the ground and everything like that too. The new cop coming in seems to be dividing some opinion want to get your thoughts on it. But I'll tell you, I'm happy it's coming in, but are you excited about it in your eyes? But in our fan base, the local pundit, they're like, some people like it, some people don't like it. There's a brick thing happening that, so I wanted to get your quick thoughts. And then I wanted to ask you about Phil Parkinson, the legend.
Right. Well, the cop's wonderful. And I respect the people on the local pundits. They're having their opinion. And that I totally respect. But the media coverage of people being critical is not representative at all. Things like, that petition.
Yes.
About the English flag.
Yeah, all 14 of them, right? People.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I think it did get up to 16, I think.
Oh.
But, that tells you everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure I understand the objections to it. Although, like I said, your audience are normal people just expressing an opinion. That's fair enough. But the sort of the attempt by the media to whip up the idea that some fans don't like this, it's the sort of thing you think, right, okay. We are not that ungrateful. I mean, this will be an astonishing building, and it's going to be built in our town. It looks astonishing. You look at all these football grounds. I mean, since the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, the vast majority of clubs have either moved stadium or had massive renovation of their stadium. There's very few that have remained as they were.
Everton, moving stadiums at the end of the year when we play the championship here.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. I'll look forward to that. But so many of those stadia look identical.
Yeah,
you go to I don't want to name names. You go to Shrewsbury. Is that different from Rotherham? They're all very similar style.
Yeah,
we go to the best and the biggest architect in sport, which in itself is wonderful.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get just a box with some seats inside it. We're getting something genuinely iconic. And I think that word's used far too often. But this is reasonable, I reckon. It's iconic. It's astounding.
Yeah,
and it's in Wrexham, Lord Wrexham. I
agree with you 100%. Sorry, go ahead. My bad.
I was saying that the brick thing.
Yeah.
Well, just to clarify this, well, about 6 miles outside Wrexham is Ruaben, and Ruaben is built on clay. It's a town, and there's a brickworks there. It's derelict now, but during the Industrial Revolution, Wrexham was thriving, and the brickworks there was a massive concern. And I don't know if you heard this phrase, but the universities that were built in Victorian times, sort of like if you will, the sort of second wave of great universities. You've got the old ancients, Oxford, Cambridge, and then you've got the 19th century ones, Liverpool, Manchester, Bristol, London. And they're called red brick universities. And the reason for that is that their big administrative buildings are all made out of distinctively red brick. That's Ruaben red brick. That's the colour of the clay in Ruaben. That's a Wrexham thing. It's one of the few things we've exported out, around Britain. Now, just because people aren't aware of it now doesn't mean it's not relevant historically. So, I think it's a brilliant move. And not many grounds are made out of brick. So let's do it.
It looks beautiful. Populists are going to do a fantastic job, and like you said, it's going to be in Wrexham, and long may it continue. So some people just like to complain, that too, and people, like you said, we have a vast community, global community, and everyone, and people in town as well. People have their opinion, which is fine. So, but I'm so excited for you all, and I'm so excited to be there. And to shift gears, and the last thing I want to talk about was, we had a couple questions on the women's team, which I guess I'll keep in that before we move on. There was a question from Bruce McFarlane. I wanted to talk about that, and then we can probably go on to Parkinson. On the women's side, what do you think the balance should be between developing talent in North Wales and seeking out whatever talented players are available from wherever in order to pursue championship and the opportunity to play in Europe? That was from Bruce talking about the women's side. And I know we were going to talk about Parkinson, but I just maybe take that one on and we'll move on from there. I'm going to be valuable for your time as well.
Oh, don't worry about that. I have no life.
Not sure you're the biggest guy in Wrexham.
Yeah, right. They're waiting outside now with the paparazzi. That first question, is it about the women's team though? Because if it's talking about going up to championship level or getting into Europe, is that more what we're looking at with the men? I would certainly, from a women's perspective, it's utterly crucial that we're able to get the development of young players right, because the thing is that Robin Ryan's money doesn't get you so far in the much smaller pond of Welsh women's football, because it's semi-professional. You can't buy the Southern players. You can't buy the best players in our division. Financially, we could, but they're going to have to give up their jobs as well and move north. And if it doesn't work out, they may be teachers or whatever down south. They've lost that, and they've made a big life mistake. So you can't buy the top players of the division, and you can't really go over the border. I mean, you can, but what we can offer in football terms is come across to us and be part of a huge fish in a small pond. We'll get into Europe regularly, but we will struggle to be competitive in Europe, which is what Welsh men's football finds. And that's the balance that is, like I say, it's impossible to break, I think, in many ways. I think the Welsh FA could do more to jump onto Wrexham's popularity and give Welsh women's football a boost. But the truth is that Welsh women's football is not going to become a competitor to the Women's Super League in England. It's not. So how do you draw players in? Even if you offer them a lot of money, will they still get the same satisfaction from playing for Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool? So their money doesn't go as far, and it has to be spent a lot smarter. So the infrastructure and the women's team is really good. And you can massively see a difference in the last 2 seasons, and things like strength and conditioning work is through the roof compared to where it was a couple of years ago, and meant that last season, very noticeably, we just destroyed teams in the last half hour because they were on their last legs. They kept up with us for an hour, and then we've got somewhere else to go. We can keep going at that level. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, I watched the under-19s actually last week. There are some good players there who hopefully will be able to develop. I feel the coaching team are very good. They impressed me massively. And it's important to keep that coming through because that's the obvious way to make the most of our investment, to be having really high quality youth facilities that A, picks out great talent, and B, it's much more attractive to go to than other clubs maybe just over the border if you want to develop. So I think it's been incredible, transformative what Rob and Ryan have done with the women's setup, building on this brilliant work that's been done before by people like Gemma Owen. But your money you don't get as much bang for your bucks. You have to invest it smartly, and youth development, I think, is a massive part of it. I know, you look at virtually all the players are local. An awful lot of them come through the youth system. Lily Jones, obviously, but there's an awful lot of that team have. And an awful lot of team are still quite young too. They've got somewhere to grow in, but that youth system's already done a brilliant job, and I think we've got to supersize it. I only learnt last week at the game that Ryan Barnett's sister plays for the women's team.
Oh wow!
As a left-sided centre back.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and she did well as well. So
I was lucky enough to see them on the Rex Coast tour at UCLA, which was great. So it was fantastic. And you touched on, by the way, the academy. I mean, on the men's side, Ashfield. Holy God, what a player we have on our hands. Max. Yeah. There seems to be, we want to, get our academy sorted out, men's and women's, and the grounds and things like that. Who do you think's the next one to come out of our academy?
Oh, no comments. I don't know. Well, Ashfield's only had 5 games. Let's give the guy. And he does look absolutely superb. I haven't had a chance to see as much of the youth team as I'd like to. The men's team, I saw the Youth Cup game, and I was quite taken by the keeper, Ryan Jones. I've forgotten his first name now, who looked very composed for a young lad and physically developed for a young lad.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be tricky for a goalkeeper because you're physically developed too soon, and then other people overtake. But he looked in control, which is what I feel. I used to be a goalkeeper. My bias has always been outfield players don't understand goalkeepers, and most football managers are outfield players. Sometimes they make strange decisions with goalkeepers, but equally, I'm a bit snobby thinking that sometimes I feel like you can look at our keeper shapes up and think, all right, he's got something, and I think he has. I think he looks like a really nice, organized goalkeeper. With the women's team, it's firstly, Emma Stoneham has come off the bench a couple of times for the women's team. I really think she looks good. She's a centre back. She's big and strong, but she's composed on the ball. She only just turned 18. But yeah, she is a proper prospect. I think physically already can probably handle Adran Premier in terms of the sort of physical test you'd be put upon. And then another player who's made a couple of sub appearances, because I'm sounding a bit obvious here, Grace Morris is an exciting striker / second striker, if you will. She is so quick. And with the under-teens, if things aren't going right, or if they are going right, you know that if you put the ball in behind their defence, if their defence is a 10-yard head start, she'll get there first. She is so quick. She really is. But she's much more than that. Sorry, again?
You can't teach pace. It's just something that you can't. No.
But she seems to time it well too. And then also, but when she's come on, and she only had about 2 or 3 brief, like sort of 5-10 minute chances in the senior team, something that struck me. She is small. She's very small. But she seemed to be receiving the ball a lot more back to goal and could handle it. You know, she's got experienced centre backs up behind her trying to knock her around, and she seems physically comfortable with holding them off, and good awareness of what's around her to play. It might be a simple ball, but lots of players can't do that. So to me, that pace is an amazing gift, but she looks like she has the wherewithal of an intelligent footballer too. So I think she's an interesting potential full package, which I like the look of. And like I say, the same with Emma at the back. She's a really strong defender who reads the game and intercepts, anticipates well. So those two, I think, will break in.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you have pace if you don't know how to stay on side to use it, using that football brain like you mentioned there too, which is great. And then obviously hopefully they come through and they do well. We mentioned management and coaching and talk about Parkinson, Phil Parkinson and Parkin and the management team. I met Phil over the summer and we talked for about 45 minutes. What an incredible guy! I'd run through brick walls with him. I think what he's doing is magic. Yes, we question some certain things, sometimes tactics, but it's like I'm a fan. I'm short for fanatic. But what he's done is pretty magical. If you look in our mind's eye right now, right now we're sitting in third place. We're one game away from going to Wembley in the Virtue Trophy Cup, which I call the Jimmy Bag of Donuts Trophy Cup. But now I'm taking it seriously. You can use that, by the way.
Jimmy Bag of Donuts.
Yeah,
it sounds he sounds like a New Jersey mob man, doesn't he?
Exactly.
Hey, Jimmy Bag of Donuts. How are you?
Who are you? I'm definitely going to put that in Ask Wrexham. Definitely, for sure. Yeah. But in your mind's eye, with Parkinson's, I can't even get the question out. Birmingham City are shooing to go up, probably. Wickham, automatic promotion in the playoffs. Parkinson, this team, what are you thinking in 5 months now? Where are we going to be?
Bearing in mind, I am naturally cautious and pessimistic. I reckon there's a good chance we'll go straight up myself. I mean, I just feel like, and I am genuinely pessimistic, and the season when we got over 100 points was the first time in my life where pre-season in the summer everyone is over optimistic about their teams, and I'm always the opposite. I'm like, well, we don't know until we've seen the season settle down and see what these players who look great on paper and look great in a friendly against some crazy team. Until we've seen them properly for a while, we don't know. We can have a sense of it. So I've never felt, we're all right. But that 100-point season, I was like, in fact, I'll be honest, straight after the Grimsby defeat, I wasn't half as upset as I thought I'd be. I remember Humphrey Carr was by me after I packed my stuff up and we were talking, and we both agreed this is a shame, but next season's going to be amazing because we're going to add even more good players to this squad and we're going to smash everyone. Little did we know somebody else would also smash everyone, but that, with hindsight, made it even better. But I felt then we were going to go up. Last season, I thought, well, why not? What is the League Two that scary? Didn't look
why not
us? And as well, I mean, for years in the National League, I'd always argued that the 2 up, 2 down system is a joke because what basically happens is it's a bottleneck from the National League. So you get teams like us who will go down, regenerate, and should go back up, but can't because it's a bottleneck. And then you also, I feel, you get the bottom 10 teams in League Two who are basically atrophying. They should be flushed out, and then maybe they'll pull themselves together, go back up again. That's how Pro-Rel works. That's the point of it.
I think they're talking about making it 3 up, 3 down now. I think there's going to be some sort of playoff right now for the National League, which is great.
The National League have brought her up and are campaigning for it. My understanding of this is that ultimately the Football League will have to vote for it, and I don't think they will. And I think they're very short-sighted. I think there's 2 reasons why I don't think they will. I hope they do.
Yeah,
and maybe I've missed something that like about the playoff, but I used to argue when we were in the National League, if we went up, I'd still want 3 up, 3 down because it stops you getting trapped down there, or at least a lot less likely that you'll get trapped down there, and that's the nightmare. And it's healthier to be able to go down, but we can get back up again. This is not a death sentence. And then also, I think the other reason there'll be problems getting a third place is that, remember, if I'm right, that it is purely the EFL's decision, all the EFL clubs have a vote. So there'll be clubs in the Championship, like, say, Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, who, unless something remarkably catastrophic happens, will never care whether there's a third promotion place up and down, because they won't be in that position. And they'll have local clubs like, say, Doncaster Rovers, Rotherham United in their ear saying, don't let that happen, because we could drop out of the league. And we don't, you know what I mean? So they'll vote for their little friends, but I think it's unhealthy. So, yeah, I'm normally not optimistic, but under this ownership, I am, for the simple reason that, let's be blunt, we have the funding to do the right thing.
Great signings.
We have high standards that a lot of people at the club are committed to making sure are being maintained. We have an outstanding manager, and we have a set of players who are extremely motivated. So why should I feel, I don't know if we're going to do this? I mean, you're right the way you quantified it. I think Birmingham are a good Championship level team. They're going to win it, I think. I don't feel they can blow it. If they blow it from this position, they'll have to really blow it, and it'll be nothing to do with anybody else. It'll be them.
It's on them. It's theirs. It's theirs.
Exactly.
But I say this too. Sorry, we have a lot of Birmingham City supporters that come into the local pundit too. I'm like, we're not going to anoint you the champions. We're going to battle you the whole way. But it's yours to lose for sure. I agree with that.
Exactly. So you don't concede anything.
No.
But I don't see, unless they got like a sort of unprecedented run of injuries and suspensions, I don't see how they blow this, personally. I know that's sport, it can happen, but I don't think it will. Am I scared of Wycombe? Not massively. I think they're good. They've had quite a big turnover this transfer window, and some of the players have brought in look good. So I'm not trying to say, they've suffered, but we don't know yet how they've come out of this transfer window. We need to give it a couple of weeks and see. They've been dropping more points lately than they did on that crazy run. And whenever teams have a long winning run like that, you have to ask yourself, okay, is that because they're too good for this division, or will they revert to the mean? And I think that's what they're now doing. I think they're similar to us. I think they're a automatic promotion / top end of playoff team. And I suspect it may be one of us who gets that spot. And I slightly favour us, I think, because we've just brought in, I think Longman looks fascinating, and clearly there's a lot of quality. And then the two strikers are potentially transformative signings to add to a team that's really doing well.
I agree.
So, where's the reason for pessimism? Huddersfield not worried me. I felt Huddersfield were very much in that conversation. They, of course, still could be, but their recent form has been awful. And watching their game against Bolton, they were dreadful. And I know you can have a bad game. I'm sure if they watched us against Peterborough, it's the same, or Stevenage, but they were dreadful. And I sort of thought, okay, I'm not seeing anything to intimidate me here. Stockport, I respect a lot. But they've played more games than us. I'd rather be in our position than them, personally. And they've lost Louis Barry, which is immense. So I mean, I can throw a lot of good logical stuff out to make me feel that after Birmingham, why not us? I
agree. The same thing. Let's battle for it too. And I think Parkinson has some magic as a man manager. Sometimes his tactics drive me a little nuts, like the last game. Like, why are we sitting back? But who are we to question? But we come out on top. I think we just have better players. But what do you think? What do you think makes Parkinson so fantastic that other people don't see? They call him Dinosaur Parky. I'm like, okay, it's just dumb. What makes him so great?
Can I just go back for a second? Because you're saying about sitting on the lead, I really don't think he wants the team to do that. But there's an extent to which once you've let them on the pitch, you can tell them what to do, but you can't control them completely. I'm not saying that he wouldn't feel we should game manage, if you will. and be in control rather than take risks. I'm not saying he doesn't think that.
Yeah.
But I just feel, listening to the way he talks after games where that happens, looking at his body language on the sides of the pitch when he's trying to get players on the pitch, and just his general approach, I really don't think he wants us to sit off like that. And I'm not quite sure why it happens. And I'm hoping that Rodriguez and Smith might be part of the answer to that, in that you can see how they make themselves available as good targets. Smith, you can hit a ball to him and he'll make something of it. Like Mullin, when Mullin's fully fit, plays with those qualities, can allow that sort of tactic to be acceptable. But I don't feel that he does that deliberately. I get really, when people go on about dinosaur and hoofball and stuff, I just despair a bit, really, because I just want to know what evidence they're basing it on. You know, we're playing, I would argue, a pretty progressive modern style of football, with centre backs who join in and step up into midfield, with adaptable wing backs. What's dinosaur about that? I mean, I feel that sometimes. Oh God, I'm going to say something awful now. But what the heck? You want a clip to go viral? There are some things that people say about football that kind of reveal they don't know much about football, and I think that's one of them. How is Parkinson, who clearly is heavily influenced by data when it comes to signing players, who clearly is heavily influenced by data as well as his nous when it comes to looking at the game, who clearly is a really good manager in the sense of he has a very good team of people around him who he trusts and whose opinions he clearly draws upon. How is he a dinosaur? Because sometimes our defence drops too deep and I don't think he wants them to, and they'll try and knock a long ball to Ollie Palmer, which I don't think is the most beneficial approach. And I think it's what's been going wrong in some of our away games. But I'm really not convinced that Parkinson is saying, let's just do that. I think it's an option if you're in trouble, more than something he's set out as a strategy. I just can't get that at all. But I mean, I remember years ago, I had a problem with my throat, so I had to have an operation. And I was sitting in the crowd, and we had a player called Rob Ogilvie up front, who was decent in the air. Mo Foul would be a good description. He's decent in the air, but actually really was better, on the floor, running in. He's a good player. I liked Rob Ogilvie. So he's playing up front on his own against Solihull Moors, who had a couple of monsters at centre-back. Huge centre, head anything, kick anything,
And the people too. And the players.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, about 5 minutes in, clash of heads. Poor Ogilvie is in a terrible state. He has to go off. We've got no tall strikers on the bench, and we have no tall strikers on the pitch. So we have to reshuffle. Morel was manager. He puts Brett Ormerod up front, very experienced player, played pretty much all his career Championship and Premier League. Intelligent, but about 5'6". So clearly we can't look long to him because he's marked by 2 6'5" guys who are sort of just come out of the Stone Age, and sort of Neolithic sweeper. And I'm sitting in the crowd because I can't commentate, and we're getting the ball in midfield. Ormerod is on his own against these massive defenders, and they're all screaming, "Stick it in his head! Stick it in the box!" I'm thinking, what football match are you watching? This is a strange notion that the closer the ball is to the goal, therefore the better we're doing.
Yeah.
And everyone's screaming it. And I'm thinking,
5'6".
What? I used to play cricket when I was a kid with my mates, and I used to love playing cricket. And it used to amuse me because my mates weren't into cricket as much as I was. And I was batting, and they bowled the ball fairly close to my stumps, and it hits the stumps, you're out, like the strike zone. They're excited. They've got one on target. Whereas I'm thinking, thank you for giving me something I can reach and hit. Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of. I'm not saying I did hit him, but at least I had that mentality of, good, I don't have to stretch and I can't reach it. I can strike this. It's that sort of thing of, it's up there. It's gone close to the goal. something could happen. Well, that's not how football works. That's not how football managers set things up. So, yeah, I don't get the Parkinson criticism. There's a problem in away games, and I can't totally put my finger on it.
Yeah, I think we get I think we get teams' best effort every single time out. It's they're up for it, no matter what it is, and I think that's part of it too. And sometimes we have off days as well, but
you're allowed to have that. And I think as well, I think teams have sussed out, because we like to pass the ball out from the back. And again, that's another thing. The way we play at home, when we get really going, which maybe hasn't happened as much this season in terms of style, but it certainly hasn't in terms of results, where we're penning a team in their half and we're moving them with that horseshoeing of the ball from side to side, recirculating it, probing, looking for gaps. Which to me, again, is evidence that we are not looking to launch it long, because we do it at home consistently. Also, if you are looking to launch it long, why do you have ball players like Elliot Lee? Because he's useless if you're going to just thump her out the pitch. What's the point in having a player watching the ball going over his head like that? He gets got some big bodies in there to put it back in there. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. James. Why would Matty James play for a team that's long ball when he's so good on the ball? It's just nonsense. But anyway, sorry, I'm ranting now. But when
his man management skills I think is incredible. In my opinion. I mean, you see it obviously more than I do, but it's pretty fascinating and it's awesome to see it. And as we progress, but
he brings in players from a higher level. They don't get in the team, but they stay happy. that's a hell of a trick. That's proper genius, isn't it?
And it makes them want to get on the pitch. You look at a guy like Dan Scarr waiting for his opportunity, Brunty coming in, Rev getting more opportunities now, things like that. So he does keep them, it does keep them honest and wanting to come in here. I had one last question, and then it's kind of off topic, but I said I would get some of the questions in. I want to let you go, like I said, valuable every time. That's from Denmark's, and this kind of has to do with certain things. Like, how well would the inevitable growing pains, high ticket prices, distance for the players from the fans, etc., affect the local fan base? I know it's kind of we're talking about the team, but going back to talking about the town.
I think that's a really important question, and there's going to be, and please don't take me out of context, but an element of you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs in this situation. It's inevitable that it's going to be harder to get tickets if the team is successful. It's inevitable they'll put ticket prices up, because as you rise, that's what's happening. I mean, I please don't get me wrong. I mean, I am the principles of a community pulling together are what motivate me. So I don't like the idea of people getting priced out at all. But unless there's some enormous societal change, if we don't put prices up occasionally, we are going to be very different from every other football club in the country. We're going to be a charity. Everyone else is going to be competing. So I'm afraid I think we have to accept that will happen a bit. And there will be other things, and sometimes things could be handled better but aren't. And that's all part of being human. I mean, I guess the bottom line is, were you happier when we were in the National League? It was difficult to see a way out, and we're getting 3,000. Was that a better time when we're playing Grays Athletic and lose? Was that better? If you wish for progress, things have to change. And I'm saying that with total sympathy for people who might feel marginalized by it all. Total sympathy, genuinely, because it's not nice to see people feeling left behind at all. It really isn't. But if we are going to succeed, we need to have more fans. We need to change in some regards. All clubs that make dramatic improvements, all organizations that have a dramatic improvement have to change to some extent. And I feel that.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
I'm very confident that the owners, with their overall view of the strategy, would completely agree with that. They don't wish to alienate people at all. But we can't just say, "Oh, everyone comes in for £5." You know, I mean, if we do, well, our ability to buy those players will be reduced because the financial rules we have to adhere to will count against us because our revenue will be down. So, you know, reluctantly, I don't see another approach myself.
I think there'll be growing pains, and I'm very conscious of that as an international supporter, living in Los Angeles, to the people that live in town. Obviously, money, you know, everyone has different aspects of what they can afford. I'm very cautious and aware of that. So, you know, long may the success continue, and it's unbelievable to watch this story unfold. And you know, like I said, I'm cautious to your time, but I really want to thank you for coming in, and I really want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk with you in our community and answer our questions and listening to you literally every Tuesday and Saturday, as you know, giving me great happiness. So thank you very much. I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Oh, you're far too kind. Honestly, it's a pleasure. I mean, I I didn't get paid until last season, or expenses or anything like that. And I've got, you know, I just get an hourly rate now. And people used to say to me, "Well, you don't get paid for it?" And it's like, yeah, it's great. You know, I get to be the fan who can chat to the players. I get to be the fan who might chat to the manager. One of the weirdly exciting things about doing Final Whistle Weekly and things like that is contacting players I watched years and years ago, and they'll like react like they knew who I am. Maybe they did. And I know that sounds a bit childish, but that's a thrill, you know? I contacted the player today, actually. They're going to interview him next week. And he was, "Oh, it's great to hear from." And I'm thinking, you know who I am? Because I don't think that's the case. You know, it doesn't make it seriously. So, you know, I get, you know, it's such a buzz, all that sort of thing. It's an honor to do the games, and the fans, whether it's the local fans who are so good, or the new international fans who are just phenomenal. It's just an honor if I can in any way help to get you guys addicted and bring games to you. Well, I feel very honored and very happy. Thank you so much. I've loved it, Josh. It's been brilliant. Same time next week.
Yeah, same time next week. I'm ready to go. I'm so much appreciative, and I know everyone in the community is too. And that the Voice of Wrexham, I call you the Velvet Hammer, but it's a pleasure, and thank you so much. And we will definitely see you soon. And on that bombshell.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!